If you care about rankings, Iowa's got that one number next to them, according to the coaches poll, just barely. But we will talk about that and other more important matters as it pertains to getting better on the football field over the next month. Of course, we're in August, and the 31st is the opener in Iowa City. Welcome into Hawkeyes Live right here at the Voice of College Football. It's another Tuesday with Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. That's your daily dose of Iowa football and Iowa athletics. Corey, how you doing today?
I'm doing okay. It's cooler. I don't know. It's probably not reached you yet. It's probably still blazing out. Well, no, you're in Florida. What am I thinking? I always think you're in Ohio. Always makes me think you're in Ohio. I don't know why. It seems like you should be in Ohio.
I'm a Buckeye at heart.
You're a Buckeye at heart. Nice day here in Iowa. And, I walked outside this morning and I thought to myself, this is not fall, nor does it really feel like fall, but there's always that day, at least for me, that first day, usually in August, where it's like, it feels kind of like football. And that's kind of what I felt today, given the 20-some degree temperature drop that we've seen over the last 24 hours. So the players are a week into camp, right? So they reported last Wednesday, the day after our show, and there have been some good little tidbits that have come forth. So it's good. We're a week in. We got media day this week.
20-something degree temperature drop.
Well, yeah, I think it
was 90, it's in the 60s?
Well, no, I mean, I think it was in the 90s, and now it is, it was 68 at 2:55 p.m.
Okay.
Let's see what it is currently. Right now, it is, let's see, 71.
This is riveting for everyone, I'm sure.
It's 71, Mark. So, yeah, I think it dropped about 20 degrees. Heat index and the humidity have just been brutal, which I'm fine with. But this definitely does not seem like state fair weather. The state fair starts in a day and a half. And so it definitely does not feel like state fair weather.
It is that time of year again. We're going to get Corey going on the state fair. He loves talking about the state fair.
People in Iowa know what I'm talking about. Unless you live up in like way northeastern Iowa or like northwestern Iowa, they have their own little county fairs that kind of replace the state fair in their neck of the woods. But Iowans know what I'm talking about.
Don't most counties have state fairs or county fairs as well?
They do, but not all county fairs are created equal.
Well, sure. I would assume that.
The county fairs that are near this, and it doesn't matter. We're not talking about population, or that has no impact. The county fairs that are near the center of the state, for instance, Story County, which is where we're at here in Ames.
Yes.
I'm not going to say anything negative about the Story County Fair, but it is not anything to write home about. Same with Marshall County. But go up to Dickinson County. Or I think a better example would be Clay County up near Spencer, Iowa. They've been dealing with a lot of flooding here lately, but they get massive country acts. It's a huge deal. You go over to Monticello, you go to the Jones County Fair, huge deal. That's way in eastern Iowa. So I think it's more so along the lines of those communities that are hours away from what's happening in Des Moines. A lot of those people don't make it to the state fair, and so that is sort of their state fair every year.
Maybe you should do a rankings of county fairs.
Wouldn't that be something? I'd have to visit each one.
You'd have to go to each one.
There'd be a lot of lame ones because I'm telling you, Marshall County, I'm comfortable saying that. I grew up in Marshalltown. Marshall County Fair stunk.
Okay. Or left something to be desired was the phrase that you used for another county. You could have left it at that.
Well, it stunk, Mark. The only thing good about that fair, they had when I was younger, I did an ice cream eating contest, I believe. And I really didn't eat any. I didn't really eat much. It was more of a how quickly can you eat a set amount of ice cream. Yeah. And boy, I tell you can't really do that because of brain freeze. Now, other things you love, like if you had an Oreo eating contest, you'd probably pound those things. Is that why you have? I always wondered why you don't go with the Hawkeye Gold brand color for your shows here when we do Iowa shows. Is that why you have black and white? Is it Oreo themed? Is that why you're doing this, Mark?
Okay, I've done it for two reasons. That is not on the list at all. The two reasons I can think of, so it hasn't been some kind of like decision that took me like hours to decide. It was pretty much spur of the moment. Number one, this is easier to figure out. So I have to go to the color code on all these different shows that I do and look up the color code and then bring it down the number. So this is just easy. I know that black is all,
Okay.
you can type in like anything and it comes up black. So there we go. We're already set. And then I notice, of course, that you do your shows with the yellow so just to make it different,
Okay.
I just
All
go
right.
with the straight black. If I had the option of making the lettering yellow, I would do that.
So you and I were just talking about some StreamYard concerns before we went live. There's one there that's not more of a that's more of a request. So I think you and I have talked about this. StreamYard seems to be doing pretty good, and they continue to add more features, which is great. It's a great platform for us, but that's not really a platform. It's not a
I'm
platform.
contributing like $1,000 a year, so they should be doing all right.
Right.
Okay. So before we get to the important stuff, which would be any intel that has come out of camp through generally 1 week, I referenced the coaches poll in Iowa sitting at number 25. I believe the Big Ten had 6 teams in the top 25. Easy to see which 6 those would be. I believe USC was the closest at number 23. So we can kind of compare those teams since we've had some recent debates over the quality of USC football versus Iowa football this year. That'll be interesting to track. But Iowa 25. Now, I'm going to make a comment that I've made in the past when we've discussed rankings, because I saw a number when I look up. So in preparation for the show, each week I'll look up Iowa football news and just see what's happened over the last couple of days, just to make sure I haven't missed anything. And I see all these headlines that say Iowa barely made it into the poll. Well, that's not technically correct. They didn't barely make it in the poll. Those are just the teams that they decide to list. The poll
Correct.
continues past that. It's the
Right.
same poll. They just decide to stop listing the teams at 25. It's a stupid situation.
Well, the whole idea of a preseason poll is stupid, and we've talked about this
It's
because
interesting, though. It
it's
provides interest.
interesting, but the problem is you want to know my opinion, because we've talked about this every season. Here's my opinion of how this should happen. It should be a different group of people that are polling preseason, and then a different group of people that poll from scratch after week 1. Because the problem is, as you and I both know, you've got these coaches, and I think more so with the media, but the coaches aren't watching all these games. So there's this weird, it's a caste system, but it's also this system where, even though preseason means nothing, it's nothing but projecting forward. What happens week 1 somehow impacts what your ranking is, taking the ranking from week 0. Like, people haven't even played a game, and I guarantee who's number 1, Georgia, in spite of their 30 offseason arrests. So watch this. Week 1, Georgia loses. They'll still be in the top 25, Mark. Who do they play week 1? Who do they play week 1? Clemson?
You know how much they're going to drive. If they lose in a last-second field goal to Clemson, who's probably number 11 or 12, somewhere in that range.
However, what if they get beat by 10?
They'll be number 8.
Maybe bad example. Who's number 2? Ohio State?
Yeah.
Who do they play week 1?
Akron.
Okay. Now, if Ohio State loses to Akron, I'm telling you, they're going to be ranked, especially if they lose in a last-second field goal. They will be ranked. If they just have a disastrous performance and they lose, they will be ranked week 2. And you and I both know, don't give me that look. You and I both know it's the most ridiculous thing ever.
Yeah. That's not why I'm giving you that look.
Well, what do you give me to look for?
You're not predicting it. You're just laying out a scenario that's ridiculous, but it could happen.
The whole point is
that would be the biggest upset in the history of college football.
Yeah. So as we go throughout the season, an average fan's expectation is my team is going to be ranked based upon their body of work. The problem is, as weeks and the season progresses, each team is ranked based on their body of work paired with what they were expected to do preseason. Yes. That's the problem.
And against the teams that they're playing with that same expectation that's been altered by the expectation.
You mean like schedule? Oh, sure. I get what you're saying. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. It
And
compounds itself. Yeah.
it's hard. You know this because you do the top 25. That actually makes sense. It's hard to rank teams after 1 or 2 weeks. Now, if you have your own system of doing it, fine. But it's hard to. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago when Iowa beat Iowa State in Ames, and there was a lot of expectation around Iowa State. But it's like, okay, week 2, how good of a, I think we were talking about, hey, you could argue Iowa's a top 5 in the country team right now because who has a better resume to this point, going to 2 Ames and winning, but that's just our perception of what Iowa State was going to be.
And they beat Penn State that year, right? Early in
21.
the season.
No. Let's see. Yes, 21. I'm getting my years confused. 29. Yeah, you're right. 21. They absolutely beat Penn
Yeah.
State.
That's when I had Iowa ranked either number 1 or 2 they were number 2 in the country at one point, correct?
But I mean, even before they did the Maryland and Penn State series of wins, I'm talking even just after that Iowa State game. I remember thinking there were not many teams that to that point had a better body of work. There just weren't. I mean, there were teams that had played nobody or had beaten nobody, and they were ranked well in front of Iowa because we rank teams based on perception preseason, not on body of work.
It's possible that with like a 50-something to nothing win over Akron, I will have Ohio State ranked. But most likely after week 1, do you know where I'm going to have Ohio State ranked? They probably won't be ranked. And people are going to flip out and go crazy and call me all sorts of names.
I agree. That's what, but I say, like the rankings early aren't really indicative of quality of team. As you go throughout the season, each week, the poll should be more indicative of potential and quality of team.
And they are eventually.
Eventually. They should be.
But there still is that, the best example I can think of that affected a national championship was in 2004, when, of course, there was just a BCS. And the preseason rankings were USC number 1, Oklahoma number 2, Auburn number 19. Well, what happened? They all went undefeated. What do you think happened? Auburn hit a ceiling, and they couldn't get past that ceiling. So they sat there at number 3. They did not play in the national championship game. Why was that? Because they were ranked below the other 2 to start the season.
So I guess all said and done, I thought Iowa was ranked low in the preseason, but I'll say that while also saying that I don't think we should even have preseason polls. If we're going to have a preseason poll, let non-voters just have ESPN's power rankings or whatever that we can meander over. Don't poll the same people that we're going to be polling that are supposed to be ranking based upon body of work, because they don't do it. And this is part of the reason, because you have the same voters voting preseason.
We've had this conversation, and I've told you that I've asked people that appear on my various shows that have a vote, ask them their approach, and they are looking at the schedule, trying to determine basically their preseason ranking is a prediction. So let's say they don't think Iowa's that great, but they think they can meander their way to a 10-2 record or 11-1. They'll put them like number 18. Well, do you think they're the 18th best team in the country? No, I don't, but I think they'll finish 18th. So you're projecting the schedule. Yeah.
So I think you should do a preseason poll. I think you should do a preseason set of rankings, but then just completely scrap it and start from scratch after week 1.
That's what I did this year, only because people asked for it. But I said it flies in the face of everything that goes into my rankings.
But again, they don't have to be considered. It's not part of the same rankings. This is just guessing.
Yeah.
That's what this is anyways. It's just guesswork.
And I don't remember where I put Iowa, but my rankings were simply, I think this is the best team in the country, the second best, the third best. And I think I had Iowa over like 14, 15.
Yeah. So you actually had, so even though that's what didn't make sense to me, even based upon the criteria of how these AP voters, or I should say, in this case, coaches, these coaches that are voting, I thought they had Iowa low, even given their criteria. Because I think a lot of people would vote Iowa in, higher because they look at their schedule. Okay, easy schedule, they'll go 10-2. Even though I don't believe that's how they should. You nor I believe that's how we believe that you should be ranking a team based on what you project their win-loss total to be. So that surprises me that they still had Iowa, because at 10-2, which maybe the coaches don't think Iowa goes 10-2 with that schedule. And I'm not saying they're going 10-2, but that seems to be a pretty moderate guess from a lot of people out there right now. And I'll come out with my predictions here in the coming weeks, but I would think 10-2 that they're going to be above 24-25 at the end of the year if they're 10-2. They will be top 15 if they're 10-2.
Now, connected to this, Corey, would be a poll I put out on the page here on our channel that is asking the fan base, what is a successful season for Iowa? And those are maybe I could have done a better job of trying to separate levels, but I did the best I could using the 5 options available. So I asked at least 8 wins. Is that a successful season? Going to a Big Ten championship game, winning the Big Ten championship, college football playoff appearance, or at least winning a game in the college football playoff. And I think it's pretty clear that people believe that getting to the playoff, that is the standard for a successful season.
I think most fans of most programs that are in the non-blue blood tier that are trying to catch those that have made the playoff multiple times. I think if you haven't made the playoff, most fan bases would say getting to the playoff would be a success. I think Wisconsin would say that this year. I think, hey, even Nebraska fans would say that this year. And how about this, Mark? And not to change the subject, but Nebraska lost their starting left tackle for the season today.
I saw that.
That is huge. They are very inexperienced, youthful up front, not real deep, especially at tackle. Obviously, freshman quarterback may not help the situation. That's going to be a storyline to follow.
Folks, if you're not familiar, Corey breaks down Iowa football on a regular basis, of course, from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Last live show was with Coach Don Patterson, so please check that out. And of course, if it's easier or more convenient for you to catch this show on audio, then you can do that as well as catch the rest of Corey's work on audio, your favorite audio platform as well. We appreciate your comments and questions. Leave those in the chat. We appreciate your contributions as well. Consider that we're here every week talking Iowa football with you. So the super chat is available. 1 week into camp, Corey, have you picked up anything of note that's meaningful?
I published something yesterday with some buzz. I had somebody reach out that is close to the program that stated that Jacob Gill has had a really solid start to his camp, much to my pleasure to hear. Because, Mark, what have I been saying for the last couple of months ever since they landed Jacob Gill? I said,
he's your
hey,
guy.
I said, just wait, because I think that this guy's underrated, and I think he's got a chance to start and help them a lot at wide receiver. So that's been the one guy that has stood out. I was told he scored 3 touchdowns. Now, this is getting very specific, but I was told he scored 3 touchdowns during a scrimmage on Saturday, including one in which he burned Jamari Harris. So, hey, that sounds really good. And I keep hearing the same thing that I heard during summer. Speed, sneaky speed, solid pass catcher, good hands. Frankly, I think he and Caden Weegan, I heard some good about Caden Weegan here first few days as well. Those 2 guys, you're going to be hard-pressed to not have both of those guys on the field on the first snap of the game against Illinois State, especially without Caleb Brown. Now, I think Seth Anderson would like something to say about that. Jarrett Bowie would like something to say about that. And hopefully that all is creating extremely solid competition at wide receiver. That's what they need. So that was one thing that I gathered. It sounds like John Nestor has looked the part so far, the second-year guy out of Chicago, Marist High School, who's looking to potentially follow in the footsteps of a Cooper DeJean at that spot opposite Jamari Harris. he has looked good so far, but that is going to be a battle. In fact, I published a segment from our recent show with Coach Patterson in which we talked about the importance of figuring out who is going to be playing on the opposite side of the field to Jamari, because there have been times, one being Purdue, I think I said on the show was 2018. I actually think it was 2017 when Jeff Brom, I mean, he knew how to play against Iowa and attack the boundary. And he did it with a guy that most people don't remember. His name was Anthony Mahungu. And he attacked Iowa's cornerbacks, I think 3 different corners over the course of one drive, because Phil eventually decided we can't keep our best corner on one side of the field and watch the other side get burned. And eventually he brought him over, and I think it cost him at least 1 touchdown. And then, of course, a couple of years ago, Cooper DeJean goes down against Nebraska. And what does Nebraska do? They burn a couple of young freshmen, Jamison Hines, TJ Hall, via a future NFLer in Trey Palmer. And again, Iowa didn't bring, I believe it was Riley Moss, over. So I think you're going to see more, and that's what Coach Patterson brought out. You're going to see more flexibility and more willingness, I would hope, from Phil Parker, especially given the inexperience of that other spot. You know, you just hope that Jamari's having an excellent camp and he's had an excellent offseason, because he may need to be a little bit more flexible than your number one corners have in the past at Iowa. And that's a big load because they've had some great ones. And maybe Jamari can have that type of a year where all of a sudden he's a, top 3-round, 4-round draft pick. I think he needs to show out this year in order to be able to do that. But they got to figure out who's playing opposite him, whether it be John Nestor, whether it be TJ Hall, maybe it's Jamison Hines, who got time a couple of years ago. His name, again, he played in that Nebraska game, got burned, but he's got game experience. Devin Hilson's got really solid experience on special teams, former running back. And then the one guy I haven't mentioned, really, I think the top 3 guys right now at that other spot, you'd have to think are Nestor, Hall, and then Deshaun Lee, who got a lot of time last year when Jamari Harris was down. But Lee struggled in the Big Ten championship game. That's another thing Coach Patterson brought out. Michigan hit him, I believe, his side of the field. I think they went 8 for 8, throwing under Deshaun Lee, and he struggled. So, it's going to be interesting. And then, of course, what happened against Tennessee. It's going to be interesting to see from a philosophical standpoint. We've talked about a degree of stubbornness even with Phil Parker. And that's maybe one of the things that's made him great. I think he shares a lot of that with Kirk Ferentz. But you do wonder if now's the time, losing Cooper DeJean to the league. They could have easily brought him back, Mark. He could have decided to come home and imagine how good this defense would have been with him. But maybe this is the time when Phil is even more flexible and willing to kind of play his cards differently as it relates to the back end of that defense. So those would be the things, but I've heard good things about Nestor, good things about Jacob Gill, good things about Luke Lachey. He looks really good coming off that injury that took him out for the year last season. And so far, so good from Cade. Heard really good things. I got somebody messaged me today and said that Brevin Dahl, freshman Brevin Dahl, apparently, let me find the message that I was sent here just a few hours ago. He's a guy, Mark, I've been a big fan of as a true freshman, and I have not made any predictions he's going to play this year. I don't know if he will, but he won a 100-yard race today, based on what I was told. So he might be, based on that, he is the fastest Hawkeye football player. And we've heard about some fast ones. Sounds like Jacob Gill's got good speed. Caden Weegan, we keep hearing about his speed, but I'm telling you what, and he Brevin Dahl set some serious records down in the Des Moines area. What was he, Adele? He's a guy who has got wheels. And I like his tape as a running back, frankly. Obviously, with that type of speed, you think, okay, what can he bring you on special teams in the return game, maybe even as a freshman? But I like his future, assuming it sounds like he's fully recovered from the leg injury. He broke his leg last year as a senior. He's got a potential to be a really exceptional tailback for Iowa. And they're loaded this year. So maybe they can work him into special teams. Maybe they can get, maybe it can be a battle between Caden and Brevin. Now, that's a different skill, right? It's not just all about speed, But they've got some different tools in the toolbox.
I got to think there's a joke somewhere about an Iowa offensive player running 100 yards, but now I noticed that the Doak Walker watch list came out, and for Iowa's backfield situation that you have covered for us here, and the relative equal or perceived equal competition there between maybe three backs, it's kind of interesting that LeSean Williams was selected as the candidate.
Well, we'll say he is the starter right now. I mean, barring something unforeseen, I think he's Iowa's best back. I agree with apparently how Kirk and Tim Lester feel on that, and probably I would guess Liddell Betts. I agree. I think he's their most complete back. I think he's got the best combined speed, agility, vision, patience. He's also more experienced than the other guys, although Caleb and Jazz have had plenty of experience. And Mark, I think it's a 4-man top right now. I think, honestly, it sounds like you have 1 plus 3. And Jazz wasn't even listed on the preseason depth chart. You had Kamari Moulton, second-year guy, listed in front of Jazz Patterson. So assuming they're all healthy, I think you have more of a 1 plus 3 format, maybe even a 1 plus 2 plus 1 format. We'll see. But it sounds like Caleb Johnson and Kamari Moulton have been neck and neck. And I think Kamari's going to play a lot. I made a comment here to somebody the other day that I don't know if everybody on this team and staff is as high on Caleb Johnson as many in the fan base have been over the last 2 years, because Caleb Johnson's this big, impressive looking back. He's got really good speed when he gets in the open field. And we've talked about some of his struggles. I think there's a perception because of what you see. And if you're like building, we're all about this new college football 25 game. If you're building a custom player, a custom running back, I think a lot of people would build one like Derrick Henry. And, it's hard to find a 6'3" running back with that type of speed and burst. But Caleb Johnson is as close as Iowa's had to having that physical specimen at tailback as long as I've been watching Iowa. Even more than a guy like Sean Green. Sean Green wasn't that big. So I think fans want him to be something that so far he hasn't shown himself to be. Not saying that the staff doesn't like him or that he's not going to play. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I don't know that the staff and maybe even his teammates are as high on him as some of the fans. Meaning, I think Kamari Moulton could easily overtake him for that second spot. And chances are they're going to need all 4 of those guys, because that's a position that, unfortunately, it seems like guys go down a lot. There have been the claims that the turf monster has gotten them, the artificial turf at Kinnick. Maybe there's substance to that. Maybe there's not. But I guess the good news, 1 week in, Mark, I haven't heard of any serious injuries. So we'll see. We got an open practice Saturday, but so far so good on that front.
Casey, thank you so much for encouraging everyone to hit the like button. Folks, it's an easy thing to do. Please hit the like button. What that does, it doesn't stroke our ego. It tells YouTube that people actually enjoy the content. Therefore, they will push it out into traffic. That's what that does. And also subscribe here at the Voice of College Football. We're close to 4,000, I believe, in terms of subscribers. So please subscribe, and also consider contributing here at the Voice of College Football. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Just make sure that you say that it's for the Iowa show, and you can get that link down in the description section. And of course, the super chat is available as well. And you're saying Saturday is the Kids Day, Media Day festivities.
Friday is Media Day. Saturday is Kids Day. I'll be in Iowa City for both. And we'll get an opportunity to talk with Kirk and all the assistants. So I'll have to talk to you off camera, because this is the week where I am going to finalize my copy of questions that I want to make sure that I get out. And we get a lot of time. I'm really thankful to Iowa that they give us as much time with the players and with the coaches. We get Kirk in front of the podium, and I'm sure that'll be live streamed on the Iowa Athletics YouTube channel, but then we'll get all the coaches out on the practice field, which is great. So I'm looking forward to it. And It's one of the best. It's my favorite. Honestly, it's my favorite day of the year to cover Iowa the way I cover it, because it's so much different. I mean, I'm not there every week, and I'm, I throughout the season, Iowa does a great job of making players available, but this is really and they do a great job hosting the media. They serve great food, drink, get to be in the awesome facility there in the north end zone that has been renovated these recent years. So it's I'm looking forward to this next weekend.
I warned you at one point that I wanted you to go through both sides of the football and make statistical predictions. Do you need to hear more from camp? Think about it a little bit more?
Statistical predictions? You want me to start rattling off what I was going to average per game on the ground or something, or what?
Like, I want you to go through the 3 running backs.
Okay.
To say this is what they're going to do this year. LeSean Williams is going to run for 910 yards and about 7 touchdowns and 4.9 yards per carry, something like that.
So I've never been. I'm fine with doing that, and I got a lot of things I want to get done here in the next couple of weeks. I've never been a stats guy. Like, I've never been somebody who.
I'm a stats guy.
You are a stats guy. Like, I don't even know. I know if a running back hits 1,000 yards in a season, that's solid at the college level. But, like, I don't know how many guys nationally do that each and every year. And I don't know what, like, I know, like, honestly, all I have to base expectations on for Iowa is Iowa, because I'm not combing through all these different games and performances and stat sheets and box scores across the country on a week in, week out basis. So, like, if Iowa can average close to 4 yards per game on the ground or better during Big Ten play, then things are going to be looking up. And by the way, LeSean Williams is on that Doak Walker Award watch list. You've got Logan Jones, who was he first team? He was all Big Ten preseason. And then you had a couple other linemen. I think was Dunker on honorable mention or something or other. And then Kirk made the comments about, I think we've got 7 guys who are starter level dudes. I mean, all that combined, Mark, and then you look at the depth and the experience they have at running back. Is there any reason why they shouldn't be good on the ground? I mean, I'm not going to say great, but is there any reason they should not be good to very good on the ground this year? What other reasons do we have to not be good or great?
The only other reason would be that teams would stack the box and say, try to beat us on the outside, so we're going to make it more difficult for you to run.
All I know is, year after year, Wisconsin had teams that stacked the box, and they still imposed their will. When you have great O-line play, yes, you can outman somebody up front and make it harder. But, man, I saw, and these were guys, these are teams coached by the likes of Brett Bielema, Gary Anderson, in recent years. What's his face from
Paul Chryst?
Pitt, Paul Chryst, whose name for some reason now always escapes me. Mark, they just got up there and ran the ball, whether you thought they could or not, and they did it well. Now, they've had exceptional running backs, and maybe Iowa doesn't have that. And maybe I've said that before. That's one of the things I think Iowa has missed over the years, is having just that one, like, Sean Green type of guy who actually won the Doak Walker Award. And maybe LeSean will turn into that. I don't. He's on the watch. He's not winning the Doak Walker Award. By the way, Abu Sama is also on that list. You know I'm a big Abu Sama fan. I'd love for Abu to transfer to Iowa.
Yeah, something's going wrong here when, in more recent times, Iowa State, a rival, of course, can pick up all these excellent running backs, most of which I don't believe were highly touted. And then you point to Wisconsin, my goodness, for the last zillion years. But if you go back to Sean Green as being the last great Iowa back, Wisconsin's rolled a conveyor belt of great running backs since then.
So
why is Iowa not?
Well, they've been. We've went over this. They've been close. They were close on. They had Eno Benjamin committed. He was committed, and I think I'm trying to think of other guys that they've been really close on. But I do think that they've got some guys that maybe can emerge. I thought Caleb Johnson might end up being that guy, and I've just not seen him show the ability to put his foot in the ground and make guys miss. He's just go. He gets the ball and he just goes. And, that's what I like about if you could combine these guys, if you could combine the physicality of a Jazz Patterson and the open field speed of a Caleb Johnson and the shiftiness and the patience and the vision of a LaShawn Williams and maybe the heart of Kamari Moulton. I don't know. If you could combine all that, you'd have a Doak Walker Award winner right there. I think really those guys have excellent skill sets. It's just, can somebody be the all Swiss Army knife type of guy? And Sean Green was that guy, right? And it's frustrating. I mean, they had Melvin Gordon. Wasn't he committed at one point? That's been so long ago. But I mean, go down the list of the Wisconsin guys: Gordon and James White and Agumba Wale and
Monte Ball
and Braylon Allen. I mean, we could just be here all day. Clay. But I just think if 7 guys, I mean, if you have 7 starting level guys, unless injuries just absolutely decimate Iowa up front, then I think if they don't run the ball well this year, then there has to be a serious conversation from Kirk Ferentz's perspective. All right. Not even taking into account what's happening with Tim Lester and his system. Obviously, that's a factor. But if Kirk Ferentz, who is an O-line guru, that's what he is known for, is O-line development, O-line play, coached offensive line with Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, and that Brown staff. He is an O-line guy by trade. If he still has not gotten this group to a point where they can, because I think the bigger issue, although they haven't had that All-American running back, the lines have not held up in the passing game or in the run game well enough. And Kirk has taken ownership of that. I mean, it's not like he's running away from that and saying the running back room needs to be better. He has consistently, even when quarterback play has suffered, he said, we need to be better up front. So in a way, he's taken a responsibility because he's acknowledged that O-line is what he knows. So I think if they don't run the ball well this year, and it's clear that the O-line is a big part of that, then Kirk needs to look at his own philosophy and say, okay, what's not working here? Because we've spent too long and maybe the game has changed to where, I know we keep hearing about maybe more gap concepts with this new offense. They ran a little bit more gap last year. You saw more counter action that helped at times, but the consistency of being able to consistently punch for 3 to 5 yards as opposed to the negative 2 to 3 yard losses that Iowa seems to suffer from year after year. That's going to be the key, I think, to make this running game successful and get that average to where it should be.
Appreciate y'all being here at the Voice of College Football. Corey and I get together every Tuesday and bring a friend or 2 or 50. So we talk Iowa football every week. So this is the time to lock in. And again, you can spread the word for us. A lot of people that you come in contact with on social media and otherwise have no idea that we're here every Tuesday at 4:30 Central. When is your next show, Corey?
Good question. So I guess TBD. I will be broadcasting in some form or another this weekend, but that's all kind of still, I don't know if I'll be doing a live show Friday after Media Day or Saturday. I'm guessing probably not Friday, given the fact that by the time we post that show, people will be going to bed and then everything changes the next day. I've made that comment. The one thing I don't like about the back-to-back schedule is it doesn't give us time to focus just on what we heard at Media Day. Then we have to dissect Kids Day the next day. But we got content coming out every single day. And we'll be posting more. Actually, got a little bit of basketball coverage here this week. There was news, was it last week now, that Jack McCaffrey, son of Fran, was headed to Butler. So I have not really talked publicly on that, but I've got some thoughts to convey on Jack McCaffrey's decision to follow his brother Patrick out to Indy, and Caitlin Clark and Connor McCaffrey. All that whole family is going to be in Indianapolis, Mark, in a couple of years. So that's intriguing to say the least. But the countdown is here. We are counting down the days until August 31st what is the first actual college football game? Would it be on the 24th, or is there a game before that Saturday?
August 24th. There are about 5 games, but there's only one power conference game, and that's Florida State, Georgia Tech playing in Dublin, Ireland. And then there's also SMU and Nevada play on that day as well.
Okay. SMU, Nevada. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, so we'll have plenty of I'm going to be coming out with some position rankings here soon, position previews, and we'll keep hitting it hard every day, just about. Things happen, but just about every day before August 31st. And then as I keep trying to promote, if people are new here, I'm sure we've picked up plenty of new people here, the Voice of College Football, and over on my channel in the last, 8 months. If you're new to the platform, I go live with Coach Patterson every Saturday. And if for some reason he's got a couple different obligations during the season for the Missouri Valley, he does TV work for the Missouri Valley Conference and ESPN.com, or there are situations that people are going to hate hearing this. I've got a wedding on a Saturday this fall that I have to be at.
What is wrong with these people?
Hey, look, no comment.
Did you get married in the fall?
No, I didn't get married in the fall.
Okay.
No, of course not. I got married in the summer. But anyways, so there are situations where we'll probably double it up. We'll have a post-game show in some form on Saturday, and then we'll have another show on Sunday. So we're going to create, this is year 4 of doing the show with Coach, the biggest forum out there for fans to talk, to ask questions of people like Coach. And we have a good time, and we basically talk until there's not much else to be said. So that's going to be a fun season.
The reason I'm looking down, folks, if anyone is questioning whether I'm listening to Corey, I was just going through our comments on the channel to see if there's anything. We forget about the comments, unfortunately. So we do appreciate the comments that come into the channel throughout the week. But as you may know, the place to really lock in is, of course, with Corey from the Hawkeye of the Storm. But we get together here every week. But I usually don't get a chance to necessarily lock in on the comments here and respond. So I apologize for that, but nothing in particular. Folks are certainly a big fan of the simulation games that are there. I'm joking. Actually, there's a lot of criticism about the ridiculous scores and yardage totals and so forth of the simulation games, which I get.
Mark,
I have nothing to do with that, folks.
Can because you're not going to actually come out with a prediction. I would assume you're not going to. And if you're going to, you don't have to speak now. But if you had to just spitball, ballpark, where does Iowa finish as it relates to ranking in total offense at the end of this season?
Ooh. I'm going to go with 87.
Wow. Okay. I say, wow, that's a big jump, man. That's leapfrogging a lot of teams.
Well, you can look at it that way, or you can just look at it as starting over. We're starting from scratch.
Yes.
And what does this team have in regards to personnel? You've sized it up on a number of occasions. We've certainly discussed it all off season. I think we've got a pretty good take on where this offense is strong, where it's okay, where it's most likely weak. But to your point from last week and weeks gone by, where Iowa is obviously weak in personnel and previous production, their offensive coordinator is extremely good and has a great track record. So maybe he elevates that position, and that's a good match.
They don't have, if you talk about confidence heading into the season, they have less things to be worried about than they have in years, because Mark, you're outside looking in, but if you were an Iowa fan, would you be worried about play calling?
No.
I mean, I'm not saying that Tim Lester's the second coming of Andy Reid, but I mean, I don't think there's any reason to be worried about play calling. But if you looked at the last 3 seasons heading into the year, every year I would have said, yeah, play calling is a big concern. I asked, and this video got a lot of hits last year at Media Day. I asked Brian Ferentz who he'd relied on for play calling, who'd he consulted with. You know, he always talks about how humble he was and how he always relied on other people, and he would not name a person. He said there were a lot of people, and I pressed him on it, and he would not name a person. Take that for what you will. Tim Lester knows what he's doing as it relates to play calling. If I had to say, Mark, do you worry about these quarterbacks being coached well before, during, and after the season? No. Now, they may not be great, but are they going to be coached well? Yes. I think it's fair to say the answer to that is yes. There's reason to believe, yes, they will be. And I think wide receiver, maybe there's reason for worry still because of who the position coach is. But, hey, would I rather have a guy in John Budmeyer with an offensive coordinator in Leicester who's had a history with receivers, or would I rather have a guy in Kelton Copeland who, yeah, I mean, the guy had some wide receiver and coaching experience, but he was a former quarterback with an offensive coordinator who knew very little about the passing game and was a disaster at play calling? I would take the former. So I just think there's a lot of upgrades across the board. Now, what degree are those upgrades? What type of production are we going to see at those different spots? We'll have to wait and see. But I just think there's too many upgrades, whether they're marginal or not, to not expect a nice bump. And I think top 100 is a very modest expectation. I think if they're plus 100, or I should say inside of the top 100, I think that is, first of all, that's like if you're 100 in the country in offense, that's not good. It's still not good. I think that's modest. I just think that's modest. And I think what you said is a pretty good bump. I think, is it possible for them to get in the top 75? That would be, I think you go top 75, success, Mark, because a lot of these guys are still the same players. Recruiting has been a problem, and you're not going to just completely change that in one off season. So I don't think we can expect Tim Lester to come in and bring a top 25 offense with him. But can he get this team to top 100 status? And if, he's really good, maybe get him to top 75 status. But I would guess somewhere between those two numbers. If it's anything better than top 75, I'm thrilled to death. If it's anything worse than top 100, I'm disappointed.
And I will add to that list, back to the quarterback position, but about the quarterbacks themselves. Since Nate Stanley took his last snap at Iowa, I feel better about the quarterback position for a couple different reasons. Both guys have proven that they're capable players. And even if one of them gets injured, the other guys in the same category, generally just as good.
And I think the other thing is that's personnel. Go back to what we were talking about earlier with Tim Lester. Even if Iowa was in a situation like they were last year, where you have Cade McNamara that goes down and your next guy in is Deacon Hill, I would feel better about it because you have a guy who I think would have coached the situation better. And I know it sounds like I'm just dogging on Brian, but I'm sorry. That's just being honest. I would feel a lot better about Tim Lester maneuvering, figuring out a way to get through the season with Deacon Hill at quarterback. And maybe, there would have been times where they would have utilized other guys at that position. I mean, I'd bring up, what year was it? I'd have to, Don Patterson would be ashamed of me for not remembering. But there was a year, was it 1989? I'd have to go back. But one of the years under Hayden Fry's watch where an Iowa offense went through, I believe, 4 or 5 different quarterbacks, and they still averaged over 400 yards of total offense. And, he looks back and says, I don't know how we did that, but we did. We went through 4 or 5 different quarterbacks and still had over 400 total yards offense on average that season.
I remember that season. I cannot tell you exactly which one it was in that range.
But that is an incredible feat when you think about it.
It is. Yeah.
I mean, imagine if Iowa lost 4 quarterbacks, even just 3. So they lose Cade, Brendan Sullivan, and Marco. They're starting Jackson Stratton from Colorado State or James Resar, the true freshman who just got there. I mean, that's something. And just when you have to talk about change, guys, it's not just, who are you ending up with? It's also the transition for the receivers and everybody, all these, quarterback's most important position on the field. So let's hope that doesn't happen. But that's what good coaching can do and get you through.
I am blanking out on who they played in a bowl game that year, 1989.
Was it 89? Am I right on that?
I don't know for sure, but I used to know everybody's bowl games by year. Of course, they went to the Rose Bowl the next year, 1990. They went to a couple holiday bowls in that range. Beat BYU at the gun in a holiday bowl. I think they won 2 holiday bowls by 1 point, I believe. Didn't they beat like San Diego State by 1 point? And they beat BYU by 1 point, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm trying to find this, but like I said, Don would be disappointed in me, but I hear that story a lot, and it is incredible to think about.
Well, folks, we've come to the conclusion. Again, lock it in on From the Hawkeye of the Storm with Corey. And again, Media Day on Friday, Kids Day on Saturday. Corey will have that completely covered. Appreciate you being here. Make it on back next Tuesday, 4:30 Central. We've got the Nebraska show. Go over there, trash talk, troll, or be nice, whatever you want to do. Just show up for the Nebraska show. It's at 7 Eastern, 6 Central.
I think I found it. 1991.
They beat Ohio State that year.
1991. They returned Matt Rogers. Let me see if I can find what actually happened there. They went, let's see, 10-1-1 in 99. Am I right in saying that? I'm scrolling through an article here
in
that
91?
That can't be right.
Michigan went to the Rose Bowl that year.
Yeah, I believe 91 is the year where they went through all the quarterbacks. I'd have to confirm that, but I think
I can tell you that in about 2 seconds.
Okay.
Okay. You got to go to collegefootballreference.com. That's your spot right there. Love that site. All right, 1991. Well, first of all, they went 10-1-1. They finished 10th in the rankings. Now,
you go look to see quarterback stats and see how many quarterbacks they played.
Well, trying to find. I'm never on my phone to do this stuff, and I'm Iowa stats. Okay. Show passing. Come on. Yeah, that was the year. Well, when you say 5 quarterbacks, if this is the year this is probably not the year Don's talking about. Rodgers threw 255 passes, Hartleib threw 54, and then after that it was 6-1-1-1. So those guys didn't really play. Really, 2 guys played.
That must not be the year then.
So that might not be the year.
I'm surprised nobody has said anything in the chat. I mean, we got like 100 people watching, and nobody. I just talked with Don about this the other day. I mean, I should remember first and foremost, but
this is the year that they tied at BYU in the Holiday Bowl, 13-all, and their only loss that year was to Michigan, 43-24, and there you go. They beat Ohio State and Columbus 16-9. Yeah, it was a good team. They beat 4 ranked, or they played 4 ranked teams. They lost to one of them.
Yeah, I'm looking to see if I can. Yeah, I don't know. This will have to go another day.
All right, folks. We'll see you next Tuesday. Hawkeyes Live. Thanks for being here.